and Happy New Year. I was thinking I might clang that thing because it would be my only chance, but yeah. So welcome to this morning's staff meeting. Faith Butler is unwell, sadly, and unable to join us. She does have a 2-hour car journey to get here as well. So unfortunately, she's not able to join us. So you've got me for today, Alex Walmsley. Today's meeting's being live streamed and members are requested to turn their microphones on to start speaking and off when finished. Thank you. Moving on to the agenda, we have Neil with us today because Fiona's away. So thank you, Neil. Neil, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Apologies received and happy to take others from people if you know anyone who can't join us today. We have apologies from, as you've said, Chair, Faith Butler, Gemma Ralston, Mim White and Councillor Julian Brazil. Happy to take any other apologies.
Thank you. And I don't think we've got any new members today. No. Any declarations of interest specific to this meeting or new since previous meetings? No. Thank you. Okay, at item 3, minutes from the last meeting, there in the pack. Is everybody happy they can be signed as a correct record of the meeting? Okay, silence equals assent. Thank you. I'm not aware of any items requiring urgent attention. So matters arising from the last meeting and issues raised with Cabinet. Do we need an update on send proposals?
Thanks, Chair. So currently we are still waiting on the white paper, and I'll go into a bit more detail and come through the budget planning report later. There was an F40 meeting on Monday with MPs in London, which Denise Bickley and Julian and Richard attended. So they've been fighting the corner again on getting fairer funding for SEND and also school funding going forward.
Thank you. Just looking to see if there's anything else that stands out. I think everything else is going to be picked up in the agenda. So moving on then to membership. Neil, any?
Yes, Chair, we have a few updates for the forum. Bill Blythe, the 16 to 19 rep, has now resigned from the forum due to his retirement. Mim White will continue to act as the 16-19 substitute until further elections for the next academic year. Obviously, Mim can't be with us. She sent her apologies for this meeting. Also, Jill Larkham, as a governor member, has changed from an academy secondary to an academy primary due to a change in role. So I gather that work is continuing to fill the gap for a governor secondary member. Those are the membership updates.
Thank you. So perhaps we could record our thanks to Bill for his long service. Thank you. Okay, so moving on then to agenda item 7. We're getting through this quite quickly. Specific agenda items, inclusion and learning update. Could I hand over then to Jack for this item?
So, Chair, I assume that everybody received what is a succinct and concise report, and it's in line with what we've been talking about in depth, i.e. there's the streamlining of our governance to ensure that we focus on the school funding. So the key part of our update is not this update, but of the service update is focusing on that financial report that Adrian will talk to afterwards. I think what we need to, what I'd like to update Forum on is the work that we've been doing in collaboration with our partners and the early signs of that, and just take any questions on that work. So key updates are the work of the strategic independent advisor is starting, and there were some conversations happening with system leaders leading up to the event on February the 10th at West Point, where the Olive Academy Trust will facilitate a vision and purpose exercise. And what this will do is enhance our inclusion and learning strategy. And let's be clear, the strategy as it stands was a statement 12 months ago of what we wanted to do, as opposed to exactly how we were going to do that. It was a set of principles that many school leaders, many system leaders, many setting leaders have agreed with. Some have raised questions that we're in conversation about. But what it isn't is how we are going to improve outcomes for children and families together. The vision and purpose exercise facilitated by our strategic advisor, Mark Vickers, will enable us to flesh that document out into something that we could truly co-produce together in order to meet the needs of our children and families. It's a vital piece of work. And what I want to recognise just within that is Devon County Council are open to the challenge that we're expecting from the strategic independent advisor to continue to improve our services, which leads me on to another part of my update, which is I've spoken in this forum and to the forum and to members and publicly about the redesign of our services. And I just want to be really clear in here that we've started. And what I mean by started is we are through the HR processes, supporting our staff into a system that is ready to work with partners, again, to improve the outcomes for children and young people. That process is complete. Now the work has begun. And what that work is looking like is our staff coming alongside schools, trusts, and asking more curious questions. Tell us about your setting. Tell us about this community. We are using data sets to enhance that. And we want to share those data sets with you in the spirit of, let's understand this whole community. We're very aware as a council that settings, schools, individual leaders, individual teachers, individual member staff know the community probably far better than any local authority officer. Our role is to ensure that we work alongside you. And publicly, I want to say I'm very aware that people have said, and people say, and with absolute justification, we've heard this before. But as a service and as the deputy director, my responsibility, Kelly's responsibility, is to move beyond just talk and actually work with you in your communities to act. And so when we, in a report to Devon Education Forum, the key thing I want to pull out is we're ready now. That doesn't mean we are a fully functioning, high-performing unit, because it will take us longer to get to there. But in order for us to be the very best service that we can, we need to, again, work with you and allow you to shape us. What that will do for Devon's education system is will allow us to address the challenges that 2026 and beyond are going to bring. For example, Adrian's already mentioned upcoming legislation. It will change things for all of us, but we feel at Devon County Council that we're in a position where we can do that. Within the report, what we've done is we've shared some data with you, and that data shows a very mixed picture. The summary of it is our children and young people, our schools, our settings, the Devon education system faces significant challenges due to attendance, due to accessing school, due to ensuring that everybody is able to achieve outcomes in their community. It also demonstrates that lots of our children do really well and lots of our schools and settings are doing really well. What we want to do is play our part with the other responsible bodies to ensure that we're all working absolutely in true collaboration to improve things. So I'm willing to take questions, Chair, on any part of the report or anything that I've just said, but the spirit coming from the service is we want to continue and improve our work in collaboration, and we feel that we're in a place that's ready to do that.
Nicola, thank you.
Thanks. I have a number of questions, but the first one, Jack, is about the event on the 10th. Who's going to be there?
Who's going to be there? Simple question. Who's going to be there? So firstly, Mark Vickers, the Olive Academy Trust. Obviously, our system leaders, and then the invite is to school leaders, trust leaders, setting leaders, in order to be part of that event.
What about the VCSE? Because I know that part of your ambition, and it's in these docs as well, isn't it, is to broaden that collaboration. And I've asked before in this forum about where that part of the puzzle comes in. I think when I asked before, the answer was it's a bit early for that. What I'm concerned about is that it's always an afterthought, and that I feel that sector ought to be part of that conversation sooner rather than later.
I absolutely agree that they need to be part of that conversation, and I think within the question, Nicola, and please be as clear, I feel that if there hasn't been an invite in to a representative at least, then that needs to happen as a matter of urgency. So I'll take that as an action from here.
Thank you. Can I carry on, or just? So just another point, I suppose. It's really interesting to hear that you feel that things are on the kind of the brink of change, but that you recognise that the system's not yet kind of fully functioning and operational. I think that it's fair to say that that's our observation on the ground. That in particular we were discussing earlier the range of experiences that people have had with regard to their inclusion partners. Some of them actually there isn't a relationship yet because it's been impossible to contact them. Our experience has been, we're concerned about the lack of expertise, and that those individuals are needing to kind of be a jack of all trades in a sense, and be across a really wide range of different areas of specialism. There's concern that that's very difficult for individuals, and that there's a lack of support sitting behind that. So there's concern within our school leadership that they are in effect becoming gatekeepers rather than facilitators, and that doesn't really fit very well with the narrative of walking alongside us and building things together. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicola. So the first thing to recognise is that the work of the inclusion partners as one role within our structure has just begun. So in December, I know that some of the inclusion partners were having that initial conversation with schools and settings in the learning community that they've been assigned in their new role. We've had some challenges in that for some of our staff, they've decided the role isn't right for them, and that's well within their rights, and they've moved on, which has left some gaps that my understanding is that our leadership has been communicating to that to schools. So for example, I was in a school this week and that's happened for them. Their inclusion partner that was named has now left the service and someone else. But that doesn't get to the crux of your question. The crux of your question is around expertise and around support structures behind, I think, if I'm characterizing that correctly. And I recognise that observation that we haven't had that feedback generally, but we have had that feedback from school leaders and from some groups of school leaders as well. The first thing to recognise is that the inclusion partner is part of a locality team. And actually the expertise, in inverted commas, of any one individual is only part of the picture, because that individual is coming back into a locality team where expertise exists. Now, our way of operating is we are creating, and we have created. So we've created part of our operating procedures, and we're creating other parts of it, both with school leaders and internally. This is a growing service. So I totally understand that in some circumstances, one, it feels like, well, hang on, you're supposed to be able to do all of these things. How could you? How can any one person do that? And I would agree, they can't. But what the key to this is having the link into the locality team, so that a school, a setting, and then individual children have access to the range of services that are available. This will improve and is improving, and we're having mixed feedback, Nicola. I absolutely recognise the feedback that you've given, but we're also having, it's a bit glib for me to say, but I was reading an email today around how the locality team have stepped in and are supporting a setting to support a group of children. I was reading that feedback this morning. I don't dwell on just the positives and give that sunny picture. This is a new redesigned service that we are growing and developing, and we're doing that with our partners in DSLS. We're ensuring that we're getting that feedback coming in. We're trying to communicate to school leaders that this is growing. It's going to be a mixed picture until we get that consistency and that relationship truly develops, that a school, individual staff, a locality develops that trust that the role that DCC plays through inclusion partners and other colleagues just becomes better fit for purpose to meet the needs of schools, settings, children, families. It's a long answer to say, I know it is inconsistent, as any new service would be. We had our launch event for our whole team last Wednesday, where it's the first time we were able to get everybody together and say, this is what we are now. Everything else has been a HR process and different things, and we've been trying to do business as usual. And at the same time, really challenging space. Last Wednesday was that moment for lots and lots of our staff. I can't tell you how everybody felt. I've had a range of feedback again, as anybody would when they were starting a service, where they were like, yeah, I know what I'm part of now. I get where my place is. I don't have to be the expert in all of these things that we call inclusion and we call school, effectiveness, all the different titles. My number one job, if I'm an inclusion partner, is to develop that relationship with the school, know the school within a local learning community, within a locality, so that I can support the school to access what is available for them to do their job, which they do far better than we could ever do. Very long answer, but I think the question has really highlighted where we are on the journey. So if I gave the impression in my update that this is the most effective education service in the country, that's not the impression I'm trying to give. What I'm saying is we are ready to become that.
Thank you, Jack. Christopher?
Thank you, Jack. And Alex, just a question on that. I was part of the Maintain Schools group. We met as 25 head teachers online yesterday. It was really productive. One of the fears coming out of that was the people, if you like, from this trial period saying they don't want to, or they wish to step away from that post. When you say we all met on Wednesday and we're all part of something, is there how many holes are in that blanket now? And what confidence can we have that those posts are going to be filled? Because again, yesterday was a mixed picture of some really good practice and people felt really supported. I myself could back that. I met with Jim Barnicott and I felt assured that he talked about his inclusion partners being flexible brokers. And I thought that was quite encouraging. Others on the call yesterday felt that they'd had the cold shoulder, they'd been given one name and then asked why they hadn't had a contact, and that name was actually now not taken up the post. So there's holes in that coverage. What confidence can people have that those holes are being filled, and that blanket that everyone deserves, really? And I know it's a hard ask, but as a number, as a percentage, how many holes are there? How confident can people feel that Devon's children will have, and Devon's leaders will have that service? Thank you.
It's a great question. So what confidence? I'm confident that, to use your words there, Christopher, the blanket will be complete. We need to recruit where there are gaps. So that recruitment process is open as we speak. We're also confident that in that recruitment, there are professionals that are saying we want to be part of that. So I'm confident that we will fill those holes. The bit that what I'm worried about is the fragility as we're starting, and as in public spaces we're saying we're ready. So I'm saying we're ready, and those recruitment processes are live. What we've tried to do, and I will accept the challenge and an action if we haven't done this effectively. We believe that we've communicated to schools that these issues are happening. So, for example, in the North, I know that head teachers have been contacted saying, we know that your inclusion partner was named as X. X has left the service. We will recruit to X. In the meantime, this person, or I, or not me, will cover. We will work with you on that. So I honestly don't think we can do more than that, but what I'd be interested in is if that hasn't happened for any of your maintained head colleagues in the meantime, and I'd really appreciate knowing about that so we can address that. The reality is lots and lots of our staff have been doing jobs, they accepted roles, however many years ago, in a service that we've now redesigned. We all know in the education system, when you make changes of that scale, there are going to be times where there are gaps, particularly at the beginning. And it's people's professional rights to say, do you know what? That's not for me. I want to go back into schools, or I want to go on to different things. So, Christopher, confidence-wise, I'm confident that we'll fill the gaps. We will not. We will be recruiting to all of the education, the inclusion partner positions. So we will recruit to that. I'm confident that there is sufficient coverage in the leadership team. The leadership team can provide coverage in the meantime. I'm interested in making sure that individual or groups of schools that feel that's not what we're feeling on the ground, I'd like that fed through the locality leads so that we can address that as a service, as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, Jack. And Phil, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Jack, yeah, just quickly in regards to this, is one of the potential barriers we faced in terms of the SEN provision is the caseload that some SEN workers have. So just out of curiosity, the inclusion partners, what is their allocation of schools roughly? And it's probably different from area to area. But
it does differ, Phil, but roughly 10 to the biggest school load or setting load that I know of is 14. Okay, so that's the biggest one that I know of. It won't be more than that. With regards, and just there was you weren't explicitly asking about the SEND caseload, but of course it's important to recognise in here, we have, in comparison to other authorities, we have a lot of staff working both within SEND ops and in our inclusion services. That recognises the scale of the challenge that we're all facing. It's important that one thing that we might pick up in the education forum, but we definitely need to pick up through our locality communications, is ensuring that we're all aware where the focus of our SEND operations is at any point. And what I mean by that is currently the focus has to be on phase transfer. Has to be on that because of the vulnerabilities that we know as a system that will feed into the funding report. We would want that communicated effectively through our DSLS briefings, etc. This is where our focus is at the moment. This is why, etc. So just something for us to perhaps, Phil, for you, not for you and I, but for us to just hold as make sure that communication's coming through as the work of our SEND operations team improves as well, because under our new leadership, that work is rapidly improving. Still, lots of it remains to be seen. I totally understand that, but the SEND strategic board holds the performance of our inclusion and learning service to account at the moment, and the KPIs that are registered show how our performance is becoming better over time. I'm very wary. You could see me pause there because I'm very, very aware that the impact of that isn't fully felt yet and might not be felt in the short term, because to change a system like ours in the context that we're working will take time, and we want to work with you on that.
Thank you. No questions on screen. So, Jack, unless there's anything else you wish to add to your report?
So I think just the last thing I just want to emphasise, and something again that we can pick up partially through Devon Education Forum, but we will also be picking up in the SEND Strategic Board and also through the work of the Independent Strategic Advisor. When you're leading systems and organisations like DCC's Inclusion and Learning Service, it's really important that you don't try and focus on the overall performance all the time, and that you actually focus on individual aspects that you think and believe will improve outcomes for children and young people, which is my performance framework, as in the one I answer to. So just an awareness for the system that 3 elements of our work that we want to do with schools, with settings, with communities to improve currently are around supporting persistent absence, not supporting persistent absence, but supporting ensuring more children can access settings more of the time, which I'm sure school leaders will welcome because that's a pressure we're all under. Supporting the effective use of part-time timetables, and supporting the continued reduction in exclusions, both fixed term and permanent. We've explored in forum at length around exclusions, and what this isn't about is finger pointing, etc. What it is about is we expect the inclusion partners to be working with schools and settings to understand your setting and to be providing you with the community data so that you can work together with us around including and making sure outcomes improve. Those 3 elements are going to be the data points that we're really coming and saying, what can we do together? And just to give forum a flavour of that, Chair, I know that currently in Devon, one particular learning community the data shows that they're under particular challenges with part-time timetables and persistent absence. That group of school leaders are coming together tomorrow on how they're going to work together to solve that problem with my team. It's that type of collaboration that we need to move to, that crosses trust boundaries, federation boundaries. It's about supporting the community in the community. What is the solution here? This week, I've been in conversation with school leaders who say, I'm going to do this around the children that have chosen to leave school electively home educated and actually are citing school dissatisfaction. This is what I'm going to do as a school leader. And my response to that is, do that with us. We can help.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. So unless there's any further questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is finance, agenda item 8. Pardon? Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. We are asked to note that report. Are we all happy to note Jack's report? Thank you, everyone. I'll get there in the end. Okay, so we're moving on to finance then, and Adrian, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So item 8 is picking up on the minutes from the school finance group held on the 9th of January. Elements there for DEF to note predominantly are all covered in the next few reports around this year's update and the planning for the process. So everybody just to note that those minutes are there and are happy with that process. We'll move on.
Happy to note the minutes, colleagues. Yeah, thank you.
So moving on to the next item, which is the month 8 financial update. The dedicated schools grant is forecasting an overspend of 61.6 million, which is a net in-year overspend of 17.6 million over that budgeted for of 44 million. The in-year's pressures are made up of a few items. SEN mainstream sees an increase in the plus packages of 595 over that budgeted at 1,778, which is an additional cost of 5.8 million for this year. As at November 2025, the overall EHCPs within mainstream schools was showing at 3,754, of which 51 of those are within our banded arrangement and 49% of them are in the plus packages. This is quite a shift from the same time last year where we had 63% of those banded and 37% in the plus packages. Something that we're obviously looking at now going forward with the banding review that is taking place across the whole of the directorate on this. Within tutoring, we're currently also forecasting to see 133 over budgeted at 356 at additional cost of 4.7 million. There is a concern here that this could still increase if growth continues on the same levels it did for 24-25. Within our independent special schools, we can see a pressure of 7.8 million due to an increase of 224 learners over and above that budgeted. This again, as we've stated before, is really around, even though we've put in new special school placements, there is still demand coming through and lack of parental confidence to keep the children in mainstream settings and the support within their EHCPs there. So we're still seeing demand coming through. We filled up our special school settings and it's now meaning independents are still high demand levels. The current total number of EHCPs for November 25 showed 10,249 compared to 9,754 for the same time last year. We are, however, seeing slight reduction in the total number than we anticipated for the year at 134, but the average cost has risen from 16,886 up to just under £18,000 per place. Our safety valve at the moment is showing that we had protection of 22.5 million identified, 9.5 million of which has been achieved to date, 8.6 which was being forecast is not achievable, and 4.3 remains to be achieved in the final 4 months of the year. The DSG deficit as a whole is showing a DSG cumulative position at 221.9 million, and that's after the contribution from the DFE of 50.7 million to date. The government has extended the dedicated schools grant statutory override until the end of 27-28, and this override allows the authorities to keep the high needs spending deficits, particularly related to special educational needs and disabilities, off the formal balance sheet items. What the government have also announced is that they will absorb send costs from 28-29, but we are yet to know exactly what that means in practice. This would be part of the broader effort to support councils as the government prepares to reform send. We expect to see this information coming out in the white paper soon. Any questions on the month 8 position?
Nicola?
I just have a question about the increase in plus packages, the HCP plus packages. Is there an implicit conclusion that you're drawing about why that is happening, and you know, how do you anticipate responding to that?
If my knowledge is working. So a lot of the plus packages come from when we're going out to schools, and though they don't meet the current banding framework that we have in place, putting in that position saying if we get X amount of funding, we can then keep that child within the setting. And that's where sort of more the plus packages, because they don't sit within the current banding levels that we hold. So they get classed as a plus package element. So that's what that's doing, is keeping that child in a mainstream setting close to where they live, rather than being put into special school or an independent setting at a much higher cost.
Christopher?
Just a steer, feel free to ignore, but I was invited to a meeting by People 2, who are looking at the EHCPs and the banding framework, and on some of the slides that they showed, it was really pertinent where Devon's peaks in funding, they don't correlate to other areas of the country. And I just wondered, when you're able to, if you could potentially share that as widely as you could, I think people would understand a little bit more that where we underfund in some places and we don't correlate with the peaks and troughs across comparative geographical neighbours, etc. So when you are able to share that more widely, I think that might actually give people a broader understanding of the situation. It might just help both tenants.
Thank you, Christopher. And you are absolutely right that the banding review work that we've done with school leaders and People 2 is the solution. That will mean that here in Forum we will see we'll see a variety of things. I mean, what those figures show, Nicola, is a symptom of a system that doesn't work. So for schools and settings, in some ways it's a cry for help. You know, we want to do this, but we haven't got the right funding. So their plus package enables them to do the work that needs to be done. When we band effectively and get the right children in the right places and all, etc., and develop that mainstream inclusion, then we will see a reduction in those plus packages. Christopher's right. The banding review, I think, will it's definitely one of the many things, one of the many elements that we're doing in our SEND reforms that will improve the system, the funding, the allocation, and the system at all levels to do the job that they need to do. Meanwhile, we've got the political thing that was referenced before around F40 and the general school funding. All of these things will come together to improve our system and new legislation. The point being is currently we haven't got collectively a coherent and effective funding system, have we? We know that, and which results in the figures we have. The banding review is one of many elements that will improve things.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, can you explain the £1 million savings not being achieved for special school realignment? What does that mean? Or what didn't happen?
Yes, so that relates to part of the safety valve arrangement that we had for 24-25, where it was identified once we'd done the original calculations, we had a 3 million slippage in the way it was calculated, and nobody picked it up at the point of the statement on either side. What was asked that we'd recognise that £1 million would be offset each year. It was put against that the special school alignment. It's just we've just not been able to achieve everything that's gone on has happened. That couldn't be taken out of that pot. So we've just identified that it was not achieved within the structure as we thought.
Any further questions for Adrian on the finance report before we move on to the budget update? I'm not seeing anything on screen, so Adrian, if you'd like to. Yeah, could we note the finance report, please? Are we happy to do that? Thank you, everybody. Okay, Adrian.
Moving on now to the budget plan for 26-27. We received the information and settlement from government in December, around 17th of December. What we find is that the schools block settlement for 26-27 is at 580.1 million. And within that, there's 1.7 million for the growth fund. These are slightly down when you look at comparisons to last year, as we've seen a reduction of about 1,200 pupils overall across our school settings. So that's where that slight reduction in like the growth fund, which was last year was 2.1 million, now it's 1.7 this year. As part of our consultation, it was agreed that schools would see funding to national funding formula levels for 26-27 minimum funding guarantee to be set at 0%. And within the consultation, we also sought the direction of funding received in the final settlement if the final settlement was lower than expected, and that we would look at reducing the basic entitlement or ALPU by up to the allowed maximum of 2.5% and then reduce any other factors in the same way. This would then still mirror the NFF funding formula from government. What we've actually received is 3.8 million below a fully funded model for the national funding formula, and that therefore means that to meet the requirements, we are reducing the basic entitlement by 1.13% across all schools to ensure that we still remain mirroring the national funding formula. In addition, you recall that we asked Forum to look at the 0.5% transfer between blocks, which was declined, and we have then put a disapplication into the DFE to still put that through. We still haven't heard yet whether that has been successful or not, but if that were to happen, we would reduce the basic entitlement by a further 0.8%. But again, it still remains within the 2.5% mirroring variance that we're allowed. What I will say there is that both versions of the school's budget calculator is now online for schools to review, so they can see the impact that it will affect whether we take with or without that transfer on there, so they're able to do their budgeting for next year. What it does also show is that there's around 40 schools that will see no change whether we do take that 0.5% due to protections that they have across the rest of their funding arrangements. The high needs block, the DFE has temporarily suspended the national funding formula for this area for 26-27. And what that means is they're allocating based on the 25-26 levels, with adjustments including accounting for changes in the numbers of pupils educated within and outside the local authority area and associated costs. So we're currently seeing that our settlement for 26-27 for high needs block is 134.4 million, and that's before recruitment elements. Obviously, the high needs continues to be a considerable budgetary pressure despite receiving any funding on top of that. The budget required to meet our current high needs block demand and agreed future growth within the service is 210.3 million, and that's after management actions and savings of 18 million identified through the safety valve plan. three main areas that within the block that after these management actions are the independent special schools at 62.5 million of the budget, maintained academy and special schools 61 million pounds, and the SEND mainstream including FEs at 49 million. Now, the government is forthcoming SEND white paper is expected out in early 26, and it will set out the comprehensive reforms for the SEND system. As part of these changes, the methodology of high needs funding will be reviewed to ensure that alignment within the new framework. This proposed 26-27 budget that we've put together has been developed based on the current available information. However, the white paper is anticipated to introduce significant changes, including financial implications, which will require the budget to be revised. Further update will be provided once we know what that is from the white paper being published. What I would say is we don't yet know whether this funding will all come into the high needs block, if there is any, or whether it goes across, gets split across schools and the high needs block, because there's a lot of conversation around inclusion being a key part. So it might be that schools see additional funding coming straight into their allocations to be dealt with for inclusion. And again, what those stipulations are behind any of that, whether it's being ring fenced within your budgets or anything like that, we don't yet know. The white paper will tell us what's happening across the board, and it will also probably talk about capital impact as well. The early years block allocation is 124.2 million for 26-27, and that's an additional 20.6 million. That's linked really around the final phase of rollout of to assist with working parents and their children costs for children aged from 9 months up to and including 2 years old, and an increase in the hourly funding rates for early years pupil premium and the disability access funding. For 26-27, we are looking to continue to be within the allowed allocations of making sure that we pass through up to 97% of the budget. We're actually looking between 97.3 and 98.5%. So we're giving more of the budget across to straight to providers than we have to within the guidance. What Devon proposes to do is actually pass on the full DFE increase through to our providers, and the allocation of the table there is shown within the table from April 26. The provider hourly rates in Devon will include universal supplements of 4p for deprivation and 10p for SEND, so that providers can respond to low level and emerging need. The full rate of early years pupil premium and the disability access funding must be passed straight on in full to providers, which we are doing. Other grant areas to look at is that we are looking at pupil premium being 30.9 million. That's based on the current data that we have for 25-26 rates. We expect that to change as we go into the new financial year. And also the universal infant free school meals, PE sports grants, premiums and teachers pay and pensions grants are all based on the latest information we currently have, but we'll be notified in the year as well around those, how that's impacting. The DSG deficit, as we're still in the safety valve plan, we're expecting that we will get 95 million across the full period from 24 through to 2032. As we say, the government has recognised that there is a national SEND funding challenge, and however, a sustainable long-term solution has not yet been established for this. Our current evidence indicates that additional DSG funding through the safety valve will not achieve full sustainability in the medium term. And to mitigate this, 73.3 million has been transferred to a ring-fenced adjustment account following the management actions, totaling nearly 18 million for 26-27. As I said earlier, this is likely to change as the white paper is released, but it's not clear how this will impact the high needs block or the schools at current position. Are there any questions?
Students for Adrian on financial planning. Adrian, when we met at SFG, I'm looking at your current report, sections 4.4 to 4.6. When we met at SFG, the budget required to meet a high needs block demand was 199 million, and it's now 210. And it appears, although I may be misunderstanding this, that independent special schools have management actions at that time of something like 24 million. It's dropped to 12 now. And I just, given that at that meeting, we flagged we were an outlier in our use, we used a lot of independent special schools. That seems to have almost deteriorated, the position's worsened. And I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Yep, certainly. So at Schools Finance Group, we were still in the process of finalising the overall budget position, and hence why actually we had the late delivery of papers for this meeting, was because things were still being finalised before they could go out into the public domain. What was discussed is actually we reviewed where we are within safety valve position. Were the management actions realistic to where we are? Could they be achieved within the next year? Was the direction of travel that we were going in the correct way and realistic for the service to achieve? Through discussions with service and senior finance officers, it was felt that we should bring that down and recognise that it's still the pressure there. The budget is still the right budget. It's just that we're saying we're not going to be looking to try and reduce the overall position so significantly within the year through management actions. Focus will be on the correct areas still within the service to achieve the aims and for the children across the board. That's why we've brought that back in to give that truer picture for this year's budget.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking on screen. Okay, colleagues, are we happy, please, to note the changes to the dedicated schools grant funding? Thank you. And we're asked to vote, aren't we, specifically on early years funding?
Specifically on the early years funding to vote.
So early years funding, we're asked to approve the early years funding proposals. I've got a question from Chris. Yep. Okay, those in favour, please, of the approving the early years funding rates. On screen, yeah. Yeah. Thanks to those who've raised their hands. Could I ask, please, because not everybody has, could I ask that, thank you, if is anyone in the room against? No? Anyone, if anyone on screen is against, please could you raise your hands? I'm not seeing anyone having hands raised, so thank you. That's approved. Pardon? Yeah. So we've received a paper outside the agenda pack, I think on Monday actually, which was a report on varying pupil numbers. And Adrian, would you like to speak to that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this came to us late as we were still working on information being provided to us through the DfE on how we move this forward. In the past, we have just created the disapplication request straight up to the DfE, and that's been accepted. Going forward, they now want us to have a vote at Schools Forum to confirm that the Schools Forum is happy with the process that we are doing. What this entails is that we are seeking agreement from Schools Forum to submit a disapplication to vary school numbers in our authority performer tool. So for our new and growing schools, we can fund them normally through the growth fund by varying the numbers in our authority performer tool. And what that means is that we allow each school to see the full effect of factors within their particular area, rather than it just being a basic entitlement funding allocation. So the school will get a better position funding from the very start for the expected number of children that are going into a year in their school. Within this, we have the two tables. The first table is showing the adjustments to actuals from last year. So where we'd already asked for an increase in the numbers, from for those schools. It's recognised where the levels have either gone above or below that. So we're either giving additional funding for 25-26 or recouping some of the money back for 25-26 from those schools. And then table 2 shows what the planned forecast numbers are for 26-27. Now, that data that's in that table is from the schools on where they believe that the intake is going to be for this year. So by doing this, what we're doing is we're making a better, clear, full range of factors for the schools rather than the basic entitlement coming through only.
Sorry, I don't know if Paul's going to come in. I think he's having trouble with the sound there. Just a question on the Matford Brook. It might just be a clarification that I need. Table 1, actual October 25 states 265. And then in table 2, the actual for the same month in the same year, Matford Brook says 242.
I will go and look at that.
Can you just?
I'll need to check which of those is correct. One of those will be correct, and we'll make sure that's changed before we take it up to this application.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Disapplication meaning because you're disapplying the funding formula, the normal funding.
Yes, so this is where with government, with the formula that comes through, they provide the October census data, and that would be what we'd use to provide the overall calculations. What we're asking is that we want to amend those by these various numbers to allow for that growth that's in there. The actual money does come out of the growth fund process and recognised, but it's just that this way we do feel we get a better deal for our schools.
Thank you, Adrian. So we're asked to vote, please, those in favour of supporting the proposal to submit a disapplication request, noting that Adrian's going to check the situation on Matford Brook. Those in favour in the room, please. Any against in the room? Those in favour on screen, if you could raise your hands, please. Okay, thank you. Everyone on screen has actually raised their hands, so thank you. I think that's approved by all. If there is anyone against, I don't think there is, because I think I saw all the hands go up. But if anyone's against, please raise your hand now. Okay, thank you. That's approved unanimously. Whoops, hadn't got my mic on for that. So moving on to agenda item 11, we are receiving the minutes of the Schools Organisation Capital and Admissions Forum. I'm not aware of anything in those minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any hands on screen, nothing in the room. Thank you. Correspondence. I have no correspondence. Future meetings. We have the future meetings noted there. Jack, is there anything you wanted to add there?
Chair, I just wanted to, it refers to something that Adrian gave in his update around the finance, just an awareness for forum members that this January meeting, every year we're not able to give you the full information whilst we await updates, and just an awareness that we've had conversations with democratic services internally around the timeliness of our reports so that they get out to you in timeliness. So what we've committed to do is to ensure that we get the reports as they stand out to you in a timely manner, but the awareness of the forum that lots of the information will remain to be updated. So that's one update to the forum. I, in my naivety, said, why don't we just move the date of the forum? To which I then understood the full democratic wheels, i.e. we need to agree these things here so that it leads on to X and Y process. So it's just an awareness for forum members that the January papers are likely every year to be not the complete set, but we will give you those updates in a timely manner and report in the way that we have done in the January meeting. I know it's a long way away, January 27, and lots will have changed in that time, but just an awareness for forum members.
Thank you for that, Jack. And our next meeting is Wednesday, the 18th of March. And I have no other business, so thank you all for attending. And, oh, Jack?
Sorry, Chair. So two pieces of AOB for me, and I apologise because I didn't give you these in the briefing that we had. So the first is it's a highlight of a piece of work that we've done in Forum, and it's around the auto enrolment of free school meals. So we've talked in here success. And at the time we reported what that's done is it's brought in, we identified just over 1,000 young people. I said in the last forum, this is now business as usual. So any young people that we find to be eligible through the same process will just feed into the system. It's fair to say that we were slightly cautious in our reporting of the uplift that this process would bring. And what our analysis has shown of the budget and within the budget, that actually there's circa £5 million of extra funding that's come into the schools block as a result of that process, i.e. we've looked at all the elements. When I say we, Adrian and the team have looked at all the elements in the schools block, and the only factor that we can see that's changed in that block is the auto enrolment, and so that's brought in £5 million into that block, which is significant, obviously, both for the number, but also the benefits that we talked about in Forum last time. What I want to recognise here, it goes back to my update, is that project was a result of really close collaboration across schools, settings, families, DCC, and that's almost every directorate in DCC involved, an external partner, district councils, county council. It just showed what's possible when we do things together. And so I just wanted to recognise that in Forum, thank the work of Forum to continually keep this at the top of the agenda, and recognise the success in our system when we find it. So just that's one item of AOB, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
My second AOB is this is probably the quickest school forum meeting that we've ever had, and my AOB is not that we necessarily extend that, but we've talked in here before about focusing the work of this forum on the work of this forum whilst developing governance and collaborative groups where we can work together, i.e. how do we ensure that we're holding each other to account but working effectively and working together in that wider education and outcomes for children in our communities. First thing to note is, one, the work of the independent strategic advisor, one of the outcomes will be suggestions for us to develop a framework for that. So that's why that work is so important. But I wondered whether Forum would agree to an action for me which is to explore how forums work in other counties and other authorities, and look at bringing a short report to forum, probably directly to forum as opposed to one of our groups, just things for us to consider to develop this work. So we have our statutory work, but just as the way this meeting works, because I'm very aware that colleagues often are travelling hours to get here, and in some ways that lots of our work is formulaic and just looking at best practice across the thing. So I'm willing to take that as an action to talk to the AD networks within education, etc., but also to work with any partners that are willing, you know, where is this working best and how can we learn from the best in order to be the best?
Thank you, Jack. That seems to me entirely logical. Is there a national education forum grouping where you can explore this?
I don't know, but that would be one of the things I would be finding out, Chair.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was, for governors, those governors amongst us, there was a meeting of education forum representatives, and that was quite interesting. And actually, we were one of the fora that were more collaborative. So that seems an entirely logical suggestion. Are we all happy to ask Jack to report back to us on how that can best be developed? And thanks for the comment on auto enrolment. I think that was a good example of where our education forum has helped. So, okay, unless there is any other business, thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you, Chair.
And meeting closed.